Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we'll be talking about making a Shiny application, the basic process during step 1, 2, and 3, and 4, given an example output that we want. In this case, that is going to be this application. So we're going to go ahead and run the application, and this is what we get. And so when first we have a function to integrate, and then we have a lower bound and an upper bound, and also an option to input the number of Monte Carlo replications. So when we click this button, we get a graph, 2D, two-dimensional graph that contains the integration curve as well as the color inside, which represents the area of the integral. In this case, this is 4.278, and we also compute the margin as well. And so we can basically change this to 3, and so we'll get another graph that starts at 0 and ends at 3 and computes the area in between, the number of replications, and we can also increase or decrease this size. So if we increase the size, we get a value closer to the actual value, and vice versa. And so looking at this only, we can see that this is the main output that we want. Before we start this, we need to go to step 1, which is building the R code that's necessary for this application to work. And so in this case, we use our MC_int function that's contained in our stat297 package. And so we're going to choose a basic low range, high range, number of replications, and just some function that we're trying to integrate, estimate to. And basically, when we run these 4 lines, we'll see in our environment that we see a high range 1 and all our variables stored in the right variables. And so now we'll run our function into RMC, and so you'll be getting a few pieces of output, which you can ignore for now, but we can see that the range is 0, 1, see that the function is inside there, and you can see the variation in the area. And then we can plot our Monte Carlo, and we can see right now that it's too large. So wait a second. My apologies. I ran it again, and it's just seemed that the area of this box was too small for the figure. And I ran plot MC again, and we can see the plot that we want. And so this is already contained in the package, so you guys can run it by yourselves and produce the same output. And so basically this is the R code that we want, and so we want to basically change these values to whatever we want, and then we can run our same function, and it did the same thing that we intended it to do. And this is basically what we call the server side, and so we see that it's similarly applied through this variable, and everything's set into this variable. And so what event reactive does is, you've seen the submit button when we run the application again. And so this is basically when we click the button compute integral, that's when it starts creating the new MC integral and then rendering the plot too as well. And so when we click the button, it should create another instance of the Monte Carlo integration, as well as plot a new plot, because this is always going to be updated. And so usually we can see there's parameters for this server, and we can stick in things for input and output, but we'll talk more about this soon. And then the next part will be actually our UI. That's also talked in the book. This is going to be our front end of our application, and we see from the application that we have a place to put the function itself, and also a place to put the lower bound, the upper bound, and the number of Monte Carlo replications. In our R code, we manually implement this and change our values. For example, we increase the size here, and then we start running everything and then plotting it. However, in looking at the application side, we have to think a little more abstractly and just basically create options for these first before connecting this in our third step. And so to do this, we use these layouts first. So this is a basic sidebar layout. So within the sidebar layout, we have the sidebar panel, which contains everything that we need to use for our later output. And then the main panel, which contains our plot. And so you guys can choose whatever you want for this specific for your Shiny application, but in this case, we'll be using this basic output, this basic panel sort of sidebar layout panel in main panel format. And so as you see here, we change the title by setting title panel to Monte Carlo integration. And then we also here, in the sidebar panel, we add our inputs, the text input. So this is going to be text input, and everything typed within here would be changed into like a character type format. And also numeric input that only takes in numbers, or else it was going to error. And then you can see here that the types of input is also different. When you look at the lower bound, you can see like an up and down button. You can decide, how much you can change your numbers like this, as well as the bottom here. And this is implemented by using this right here. You manually change it. Numeric input does this. And also the action button is basically the submit button that we were talking about earlier, where you can set it to any specific text that you want. So you can just say find integral in this case, and then reload the application, and it should change your button into find integral instead of compute. And the main panel should contain the plot output that we want, this one. So this is basically the front end of it. So once we have the server side and the UI side, we want to connect it by, so this already, everything that's created in this is basically transformed into this object called input. And so when you set names for these specific inputs, this is going to be counted as, like later when it goes to the server side, it's going to be shown as input $fun. So you can access that within the server. The server now takes in input as an object from the UI, and you can basically play around with these specific variables that were created. Also, the output you can set as well within the server, which you can't set within the UI. So the UI is only going to plot whatever's in the server. So output is something that you have to set in your server. In this case, we render the plot by running the plot on the object that was created. And so, yes. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you.